Folks, welcome to Innova. Thanks so much for coming. We're happy to support the JavaScript community. Justin wants to come in and say a few words and introduce our first speaker, although we're having some camera questions, so I'll hold the floor for a little while longer. But honestly, just thanks for coming and welcome. If you didn't find the beer, I know most of you found the pizza. There's also soda around the corner. So thanks so much and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you. All right, so you said everything you want to say?
Well, great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they do a lot to support the meetup here, so we're very grateful for having a space and food and all that stuff. So, hi, I'm Justin Love. I'm one of the organizers. Also, Junkar does a lot of the coordinating of speakers and keeping all that stuff straight. So I'm extremely grateful to have him helping out. And then tonight we also have someone, Ted, is it Kangi, wanted to make a special request, or did he? Is it you?
Yeah, should I use the mic?
Yeah.
Yes, hello, I'm Ted Kangi. Yep, and I work at Chicago Public Schools. We're looking for an Angular 4 developer. It's probably a 4-week stint, and if you have those skills and are available, let me know. I will post, I think, on this forum or meetup group some information. I'll also be here after the meetup. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, so on to our main events. So we've got all sorts of packaging and building stuff today. So first up, we've got Webpack with Cesar and Andres. Yeah. Got that right? All right, cool. All right, you want to stand?
All right, so hello guys, I'm Andres. Me and other folks, we're from Semoga. This is a company based in New York and Bogota. So we all are Colombians. We came very far to get this chat done. So with that said, give it up for Cesar and Webpack.
Hi everyone. So welcome. I will be talking about learn and understand Webpack. First, my introduction. My name is Cesar Guerrero. I am a front-end developer at Semoga, as Andres said. I'm from Colombia. So I'll be here once a year in Chicago for about 3 months or 2 months for working. So this is this time of the year, so I like to be here. First, I will start with this. We are better and happier developers when we understand our tools. Webpack is a model bundler that maybe all of you have have used, but maybe you will think that it's really complicated to use, or maybe you don't really understand what it's doing, so you don't. You have to understand it really well to work with it very well. So first of all, why Webpack? You can see I take this graph for npm stat. Webpack is being downloaded about 7-8 million times a month. So it's really popular. It's been used by React, Angular, Vue. Whenever you get like their CLIs, you will get the boilerplate and you will get Webpack already with that. So it's really popular because it's really powerful And if you know how to get like all the config well done, you will have a very nice application. So first, what is Webpack? This is the description that you will get if you go to Webpack to their site. Webpack is a model bundler that takes models with dependencies and emits static assets representing those models. So that is the definition that they give us. And if you read that one for the first time, you will see, what? What is that? So it's a model bundler that takes models with dependencies and emits static assets representing those models. It's not really clear, so I prefer to understand it in this way. It will take, Webpack takes stuff that is not nice for you to write and turn it into stuff that is nice for the browser to read. So, stuff that is nice for you to write is everything in our code base that is easy for the humans to read. You have like a pretty formatting, you have like your double quotes, single quotes, semicolon, no semicolon, whatever. You have readable variable names and methods, so you between your coworkers will understand what is doing or what you are trying to do in your code. And maybe you will have your code separated in multiple files and maybe organized in some other folders with some logic of that folders and that arrangement that you have over there. Or maybe you are not writing in vanilla JavaScript and you are using EX6 or TypeScript, CoffeeScript, JSX, Vue, whatever. So you will need to transpile those languages into JavaScript for that to be loaded and run in the browser. And what is the stuff that is nice for your browser to read? First, old school JavaScript, ECMAScript 5. You will know that most of the browsers now will run ECMAScript 6, but they prefer to use the standardized JS from the couple of last years, that is ECMAScript 5. So it will be nice to turn all your new code or your JSX files or Vue files into ES5. Also, your browser will prefer to use fewer requests to the network. It will be good for bad mobile connections. So when you are trying to get like you have no very good connection to the internet, so your browser will start to get those requests. If you have a lot of requests, they will take so much time, and it will be really slow, and it will be not a very good user experience. And it also prefers a smaller response. So your browser doesn't care if you have like white spaces, if you have pretty variable names, if you have like any methods, whatever. It really just wants the less amount of bytes that you can send into it. It will be faster for the browser to read. So, what are the problems that Webpack solve? First of all, name spacing. Also, we'll know that whenever you work with JavaScript, if you declare any variables outside functions, those are global. So if you are trying to work within many libraries or maybe between your own code, you will have to get like some name spacing or something that you cannot override within you are moving or doing some other stuff after. And also you will try to optimize all your code. You will do the amplification and minification, so you will get rid of the white spaces, all your big variable names. It will be just turned into A, B, small names, so you will save bytes, you will save all of your bundles will be very small. And also you will try to send the code to browsers more efficiently. Webpack will create small chunks, but most of the times you are trying just to get one bundle. From all your code, you will try just to get one small bundle, so you will make just one request that have all your logic ordered. So this is the problem that you are trying to solve with Webpack. So the first time I worked with Webpack, I assumed that it was like this. It was like a giant black box. I don't know what is happening over there, so I have a lot of files, a lot of JavaScript files, maybe JSX files, images, styles, whatever. And then I run Webpack, that is the black magic box. and it will give me the bundle.js, that is the code that I will be shipping to production. So that is the really how I assume Webpack work first when I use it. So maybe how many of you use Webpacks in your project? Okay. And how many of you really understand the configuration and all the things that Webpack is doing like under the hood? None of you? One? Okay, nice. So it will be like magic to me when I first use Webpack. Maybe for most of the people that use Webpack, it's magic. But it is not. So how Webpack really works? It will start with just like a single file, a single entry file. It's just bold over there because we will need that after this. And then with that file, it will apply 4 steps. You have the first one, that Webpack will try to find all your dependent files. Then after that, it will apply some loaders. We will see loaders a little bit later. It will implement a module system, and then you will create the final asset. That is that you really want that you are going to ship to production. So, the first step, we are going to find all the dependent files. So, first, Webpack will create an array, and it will try to keep track of all your files that you are using in all your code, including the node modules, any other dependency that you have externally. It will be on the other array. So it will start in the entry file and then look for any dependency declarations. AMD, CommonJS, EX6. For this example, we are going to use CommonJS. So it will try to find any requires and any module exports. For this, we are trying to find the dependent file, so we are trying to find all the requires. And then after you get all the requires, it will go for each one and will try to validate the path. And that path must lead to a file or an NPM module. If you don't have like a solved path, or the path doesn't lead you to a file or an NPM module, it will break over there. So if the file is readable for Webpack, or is an NPM module that you can use, or you have installed, so it will add that file to the array. So you will have this array. The first position, I don't know if anyone can see the code. People from the back. Good. So the first position of this array will be your entry module. And then it will start one dependency and the other dependency and so on and so forth. So you will have this array. Remember this, we are going to use this array in the next steps. Then we are going to apply some loaders. In this step, all the loaders are just going to be the user-specific loaders. So all the configuration that you have set for your bundle to work or your baseline application to work, you have to specify in the config file, and it will run over here. And we can also change some loaders. So you can run one after the other, and so on. But we'll need to know first what is a loader. A loader is just a function that takes the source code, makes some changes, and returns the new code. They are really, really easy. So for example, I have here the JSON loader. It's just a function that takes some code, that is the source code, and then returns an string that is just module exports with the JSON stringify of that source. And that's it. That is all the loader, the JSON loader that you are using over there. Really easy. So in your Webpack configuration, you will have something like this. It is a module key that is an object with all the rules that you are going to apply in this step. So for example, I have here I have here the first rule that will apply to all the files that end in that view, and I'm going to apply the view loader. And those files are going to just include the files that are in the src folder. So we try to get all those files. that are in the view, that are in the src folder with that ends in that view, also with the JS. So it will not, you can specify if you want to include some folder or you want to exclude some folder. So for example, if we are using JavaScript or trying to include some loaders to JavaScript, it is like, it is nice to exclude your node modules because you are not trying to use the bubble loader for with them, because there are libraries that are supposed to be shipped all the way to Transpile and just for you to use. So you will just use the bubble loader for your JS files. And we have this, that is the style loader. We are going to use less in this example. And you can change some loaders that will load one after the other after the other. There is like a funny thing over here. So whenever you change any loaders, you will have to set an array. That is this use key that you have over here. And you will have the less loader, the CSS loader, and the style loader. The way that Webpack applies these loaders is from the bottom to the top. So it will start with the less loader, then go to the CSS loader, and then go to the style loader. So for example, we have imported in our main file our style.less. It will run through the less loader, and in that loader, the only thing that it does is convert all the less variables and all those things into CSS. So that output, that is the CSS file or the CSS string, will pass through the CSS loader, and that CSS loader will convert all the CSS into an object in memory for JavaScript. So they can read that object in memory. And the last one is the style loader. This style loader will just apply like a new function that will send that CSS JavaScript file to be append to the style to the head tag as an style. So it will, all your styles when you are applying are using Webpack, and these loaders will be applying a style tag in the head. So this will make that function, so it will run it and it will be on the top. We will see more of this after this. So the third step is implement a module system. Webpack, all the files that you have in Webpack will be modules. So it will try to implement I will say a specific module system that Webpack will use to run all your code. So it will wrap each file in a function. For that, you will use a loader that is in Webpack, so you don't have to take care. And that function will pass two arguments, a module and Webpack require. More on this later, this Webpack require function. And remember that array that we have created in the first step. We are going to use the index of the files or the dependencies that we need over here. It will replace all the instance of require. So for example, we are requiring here this foo dependency. And it will replace that with Webpack require and the index of foo that you have like in the first array we created. So that is done also with another loader. So let's see this example. We have a file that is called .js, and it's just a module that exports a function that takes x and multiplies that by 2. So using these steps, we are going to first grab that file in a function, and we are passing module and Webpack required to that function. That's it. And we have our main file that is our entry file that will require that .js file and just console out the result when you pass to that function. That will be 4. We are going to grab that exact file with our function method, and we are going to pass module and Webpack require. And we are going to replace the require statement with Webpack require and the number 1. Why the number 1? This is the index of that file. Remember, the first index in that array is the entry module. The next one will be the first one required after that. So in this example, it's just number 1. And after that, we are going to create the final asset, that is like the real magic under the hood of Webpack is doing this. We have to define the Webpack require function that we have used before. And this final asset will have all our code, starting with the entry file and all its dependencies, and should pull all those files together in just one file if we are creating just one bundle. So for that, Webpack is going to do this. It's going to create a self-call invoke function. So you have like all your scope over there, and it's going to pass a module array. That is the array that we have in the first step of all our dependencies. Remember, those dependencies are now functions that we can run. But first, we are going to declare the Webpack require functions that just receive an index as a parameter. After this, we are going to create a module object with an export key that is also an object. And after this, we are going to require a file from that module array using that index. After that, we are going to invoke the function that we have appended first. So remember that we grab all our files between a function, and we are going to we were sending module and Webpack require. This module is the object that we have created here in line 5, and Webpack require is the same function, so it's just calling it itself. Then we are going to return module exports, and then we are going to do the Webpack require with the first, that is the entry module. So, anyone understand what is happening over here, or do you have any questions over here? So, it will create a function that is invoking itself with all the dependencies. We have all the dependencies over here. That is all the code that are now functions that we can just invoke. Inside that function, we are going to create another function that is called Webpack require, that is going to call all our modules starting in the index 0. So it will start with the first one. So it will go Webpack require with the index 0. Do we have? Okay.
There's one somewhere else, I guess.
Let's get back.
Sorry? Good. Okay. So it's going to here we'll start with the index 0. So it will declare a module that is like just an object that is going to work over here with the export key. Then it will go to try to get that from the module array. It will try to get the first file, that is the first function that is called. So here we are assigning that file, and then we are invoking that function with module and Webpack require. Why are we doing that? So that module that exports that we have in that file is going to be now in this module that we have over here, and we can return that export. So for example, here we are passing module, that is the object created outside, and as we are doing module.exports, we are assigning that function now to that module.export that we have over here, and we are just returning that. So it got executed one time, and for all the dependency files, just one time, and another. So there is a problem over here with this logic. That is, what happens if you require the same file in 10 different files? With this, it would run 10 times, because it will call it one time and another between each file. So we need to cache those files. For that, Webpack is doing this. In line number 2 is creating a cache object. And then in line number 4, if that cache is already set, it will return that one, so it will not run twice. And in line number 8, it is just saving that in that same object. So you will have that module, that file with that module exports will be saved in that cache, that index. So it will run just the function one time per dependency. So you will have like 10 times running now. For you to really understand Webpack, you will have to know That is the four steps that we have told before are the steps that are going to run when you try to bundle all these things. But also you will need to know the four core concepts. The first one is entry, the second one is output, the third one is the loaders, and the fourth one is plugins. So the first one and the second one, the entry and the output, is are the unit that those two are just the one that you are really required for Webpack to run. So you don't have like to declare all the loaders and all the plugins. You will have just to declare the entry and the output, and it will take all your dependencies from your entry file or from your entry file and so on, and will give you just a bundle with that output. But you will have also some loaders, so you can maybe transpile your code and do some other things to your code. You can set those, and also you have your plugins. That entry files just tells Webpack what files to load on the browser, and that output will tell Webpack where and how to distribute those bundles or compilation, or just the bundle file that you are trying to create. And also you will have the loaders that will tell Webpack how to load those files in your content base. So for that loaders, you will know that maybe Webpack only understands JavaScript. So you will have also, if you are importing, for example, images, CSS files, and all of that, you will have to convert all those into JavaScript first. So you will have to run some loaders if you are trying to import any other files that are not JavaScript. And there is another one that is the plugins that is used to customize all your Webpack build with processes in so many ways. Those are the really powerful and the really magic behind Webpack. It will just execute a method in the Webpack compilation. So it will get some hooks and it will try to run some optimization or some other things that you can run over there. After that, we can now start using Webpack. It's really easy. We have just to install as a dependency, as a development dependency, Webpack. And then you can run just Webpack, main.js, and this bundle.js. This is all you need to run Webpack. We can do it over here. And we can also run that from production. So this is like a very, very basic 3 lines of code, or maybe just 2 lines of code that you need for running Webpack. But there is a problem when you start like to adding some loaders. It will be very difficult to just use the CLI and start adding some other lines to here, just to params to the Webpack CLI. So for that, Webpack gives us the opportunity to create this Webpack configuration file. This is named webpack.config.js. There is just a file that will export an object, also with the only 2 requires keys, that is the entry and the output. So here we have just the entry, that is the main.js in our same context file, and the output will have the path and the file name. So we are telling here Webpack to have the output in the dist folder and have the file name in the bundle.js as bundle.js. So if you run this or this, you will get the same output. It will be just the same. But you are here trying to get just the config file for whenever you try to add some loaders and some stuff over there. So maybe just give me a second. So if you, can you see my screen? Yeah. Can also see my code, right? So I am get back to the presentation. So whenever you have this config file, you will start to use some loaders. So for example, here I'm going to add a bubble loader that is going to run only the JS files. Maybe I want to use ex6 on ECMAScript 2015. No, it's running out of value. That's fine. So here we set all the module and all the rules for that, and we are start using those. So it's really easy. So you have just to have this one, and you will have all the power for adding more loaders and more stuff to your code. Do you have any questions over here first? Anyone?
Yeah. When you run it in production with repeat, is it anything besides just being minified?
It is just running the Uglify plugin and the Uglify plugin and the Minify plugin. So it will just trying to get rid of all the white spaces, get rid of all the dupe code. If you have maybe duplications of code, it will just try to get rid of those, and it will minify all the files to get really small files. So that is the one that you are going to ship to production. The other one is just the one that you are going to use in development. Any other questions over here? Do I have the? Where can I plug this computer? I'm going to.
Yeah. So you just need some power, so there's a power. Yeah, so we'll just take this.
Sorry.
Like a stand, you can use this. Oh. So you have the cord, you can set up.
So sorry.
The power management.
So for this, we know that when we use this we can just change some other loaders and give some other functionality to our code. For this time, for instance, I can run all the eslint. If you don't have any linter in your projects, please use a linter. Any of those, I like the eslint, so I will show you how to use eslint in Webpack. You will have to install the eslint loader and eslint as a development dependency, and you will have to create an eslint RC file. This is just the configuration for eslint to know what are the rules that you are going to set to your files. For example, here we are seeing that we are using ECMAScript version 6, and all our files are source type as modules. And after that, we go to our configuration file, and we are going to chain those loaders one after the other. So first we are going to run the eslint loader, and after that we are going to run the bubble loader, because we are going to we want also always to link our files from our source code, not from the translation that Babel does. And for example, if you have some coworkers or some that is having problems using just single quotes or double quotes and start using all them in all files, so you can fail when you have any warning on the eslint. So here we are changing here the same loaders, that is the eslint loader and the bubble loader, but we are sending some option to the eslint loader. Here we have fail, so whenever you're trying to run and you get like it will just stop and throw an exception, and it will fail all your compilation, so you will not have the bundle. Any questions over here? Also, if you have Webpack, you can install the Webpack dev server. This server is just for development. It's really helpful and it's really easy to use. You just have to install the dependency of Webpack dev server, save it as a development dependency, and then you just have to add this key, that is the development server, dev server, in your config file. So this dev server will know that will try to load all your files from this folder, and will run all that in the port 9000. It will also run, whenever you try to run Webpack dev server, it will run the Webpack with another special parameter, that is the watch. So it will update every time, it will update the bundle every time you change anything in your code. So it's really good to have that running over there. And here we also, with Webpack Dev Server, we can now have these features that is the hot model replacement. The hot model replacement just whenever you change anything in your models, and will update all of you have in your application, whatever you see in the browser. For enable HMR, that is the hot model replacement, you will have to import the Webpack dependency because it's bundled over there. So you will have to set a new key that is the plugins, and you have to create a new instance of webpack.hotModel-replacement plugin. This will enable HMR, and you have to tell your server that you are going to use the hot model replacement with just using hot true. This will tell just the dev server that you are using now HMR. So we can see this running. One second. So I have a really small example that is just bundling all the we have in the slides. So I have just a main file that we are importing some styles with less, and we are importing the sort by method from Lodash, the development dependency I have over here, and we are importing another method from the math helpers. That is another file that I have over here. The math helpers will be just two functions that I am exporting with ECMAScript 6. That is the double method and the triplet method. So this is the one that we see in the example, and I'm going to assign the result of that using the number 2. So this will be 4, and I also have an array that have some names, and I'm going to use the sort by function. That is the one that I get from, and I'm going to sort that by name. So I will get this array, and it will sort that, and I am going to map that just to get the names, and this is just a sorted string. So we will have a string separated by spaces for names concatenated over there, and I am going to set this the document that is just a div, maybe, I think so. And I'm going to set the inner HTML to be the sorted string plus, or just with two dashes, and the result of the first double method. So here in my this folder I have my bundle ready, but I can remove that. 1 second. I'm going to use just the index that is this. It is just a small boilerplate, a small HTML file, a basic one that uses the bundle.js and has this h1 with the span, that is the one with the ID as app. And if I try to run this one, I have set in the configuration file also the Webpack Dev Server. So what are we doing here? We have our path, our Webpack, and we are exporting this configuration object. We set the entry to be our main file and the output to be created in the this folder with the name of bundle.js. And this is the instructions. The model object is the instruction that we're going to run between your modules, that are all your files that you are requiring in the main file. And we have some rules for them. The first one is whenever you find any JavaScript file, it will try to load, it will first apply the eslint loader, and then we will try to apply the bubble loader for modifying this and transpiling this to a ECMAScript file. And also we have another loader over here that is the less loader that will turn as the example the less loader, the CSS loader, and the style loader. Forget those styles in the browser running. And we are creating a dev server with the hot model replacement, and it will be running in port 9000. So if you see our styles over here, we're just setting the background color as this color, so it's like a pink color. And here we're going to run the Webpack, the server. I'm going to use this one. Now I can run. As I am working on the same dependencies that I have installed in my node modules, I have to run from here, from the node modules. Node modules.bin Webpack the server. If I run over here, it will start a server in the port 9000. This is weird. So this will start a server in the port 9000, and it will try to do this bundle, that is all our files in just one, and we can run it over here in our local server.
Is there any reason why the modules are loaded but
I don't know, when they created that the first time, they created like that, so that is just using 2 times 2, and it will get 4. I can change this one with 6 maybe. Oh, save that, and that will be reflected in our browser right away without loading all that stuff. Do you have any questions over here? How this is running, something, and maybe if I can change any style, that we can just apply this to our span maybe. That change will be reflected right away. So it's really fast whenever you are developing your application. But maybe you will see that we are creating a bundle with just like 2 or 3 files, and it's 900 kilobytes. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry.
Can you show how you're importing the bus file into your...
Which one? I have the main file.
Yeah.
This is our entry point. So it will try to get Lodash, and after that it will try to get
Do you
these.
have your CSS in there though as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the first one. This is the entry point also for our list. We can import all our lists over here, or we can import all our lists using list. So you will dig all the way down to get all the dependencies and then bundle up all things over there. So this is not the bundle that we are shipping over here, because here it has some other things that Webpack dev server uses. But we can run Webpack. I have this load, so we can run production, and this will create the bundle in a smaller size that I can send to production. This is just 85 kilobytes, so it's like 10 times lighter than the other one. And this is the one that can run anywhere in any other site. I have this code in GitHub, so I will share that after this. So we are over here. This is the hot model replacement. We have seen that working in the server, in our local server. When we do the Webpack production code, it will do this. This is a really cool feature that is created right away with the Uglify plugin. It will do the tree shaking. The tree is whenever you have like dead code that you are not using, or just maybe duplication of code, it will just remove all those. How do they manage to do that? It's just realizing the ECMAScript 6 module import and export. So you are just importing the things that you need, the function that you need, and not all the files. For example, we are using here Lodash. We are just importing sort by. That is just one function, and we are not bundled all the Lodash library in our bundle. And also in the math helpers, we are using just the double method. So if we try to use the other method in production, that is the triple method, this will be not available over there. So this is done just by Webpack. We have to take care of those. Yeah, that's it. I will use this time. Use the right tool for the right job in the right way. So only the configuration that you need in Webpack. Don't just copy and paste the code that you see in Stack Overflow and it's working. You have to understand really well what is happening under the hood, because maybe you are shipping code to your production site without knowing that you can make that thing smaller or easier to the user, better for the final user. So I will choose my tool very carefully, and if I use Webpack, I will set my configuration depending on my application. Not just using someone else's configuration because you don't know what is happening over there. That's it. Thank you. Special thank to the Semoga team, Andres Zorro, Mauricio Cubillos, and Max Flores, that encouraged me doing this talk. This is my first talk, so that's why all this nervous. That's it. Thank you. Do you have any questions about this? You can get the code here, tinyurl.com Webpack Chicago. I will send the slides to the group too. Thank you.
Is there an outlet up here though?
Yeah, I don't see one. I've got,
I might be able to
There's
make
no
it.
plugin on the wall.
Yeah, I'll make it for a while. 40%.
I've got an extension cable if you can reach to something. Alright, we should be going back online.
Getting set up. The big difference between StealJS is just like Webpack. The big difference you'll see is it supports the modlet development approach, where you can create a whole bunch of different test files and demo pages and things like that. If you've ever used require.js, it's very similar to that, but it has a similar feature set to Webpack. This talk is going to be for people who are kind of familiar with Webpack, who have used it. If that's not you, and well, hopefully I was glad I went second. The presentation was a good warm-up. We will be talking a little bit more advanced. I'll kind of touch on some more advanced things, especially progressive loading. We'll see how it goes. Please stop me and ask questions if you have any. Maybe just don't record this one then.
Right, it's up.
Oh, it's working? Oh, okay.
Well, we'll see how well it's working, but it's up.
Is the other side of this working for everybody? Okay, because this one is like flashing. All right, so let's get into it. Today we're going to create a progressively loaded JavaScript application and require.js as the modlet syntax. That is driving crazy. Or using ES6 and CommonJS modules, we're going to organize our whole project in modlets. Bitovi's a JavaScript consulting company. If there's one thing I think that we do well that everybody should learn from, it's how we organize our project structure. Every single module has its own folder, its own JavaScript files, its own test files, styles, everything. We build like little applications in pieces and then we glue them together. And we'll see a very small example of that today.
Justin, should I turn this off?
Yeah, that would be great. And then we're just going to build the app in production, and we're not going to do this step because there's not enough time, and we're going to learn a lot about StealJS. Again, please stop me if you have any questions. This is the app that we're going to be building. It shows a weather report for Chicago and a bunch of images of puppies. So what's not to love? It works so that it's actually like as you click on a link, it's supposed to load the code just for that page. And as you click like puppies, it should load just the code for puppies. I'm not really showing that now, but I'm just going to show the app. So I click on weather, and then it loads the weather code and shows the weather report. And then you click on puppies, and then you can click the back button. All that kind of stuff works. So this is the app. The puppies use something called Justified Gallery. We'll see using this too. All of this, what I'm going to be going through, if you go to StealJS.com, you'll see the progressive loading guide. I can show that at the end of this. We're basically just going right through that. I removed a few parts, like StealJS supports Steel Clone, which is basically dependency injection. So it's not going to do show how to test with dependency injection, but StealJS does that. So why use StealJS? Because it's a module loader. If you're not using module loader, something wrong, in my opinion. Like get whoever your boss's approval or whatever. Do whatever you can to use a module loader. Who uses module loaders here? We have a lot of like Webpack or require.js or okay, most people building that application. So I'm going to make a folder called my hub. That's the name of my project, and I'm just going to npm init inside of it. And then I'm pretty much just going to hit enter for all of the defaults. What you write here doesn't really matter, so I'll skip this. This creates a dummy package.json. I've seen one of these before. All steals can use in your package.json. No separate client-side JavaScript loader. If you've ever used require.js, it's just like require.js. Steel also has builder and bundler. That's like R.js if you use require.js. So you need to install that separately. So that's Steel Tools. I'm also going to install the plugins that allow me to load less and CSS files. And I'm just going to save those to my package.json. And then I'm going to create my first module. This will be my hub.js. And it's just going to use ES6 to import jQuery and just write goodbye script tags because we're done using them. And then to use Steel, I add this, I just have to load Steel in my node modules folder. So I've installed Steel. It created a Steel folder with a StealJS. You load that. What it'll automatically do, this one line, will go to your package.json, see its its main module, and then try to load that. So Steel is very like a little bit less configuration. It tries to guess. So I'm going to change to my hub.js, and that's about it. Now that would load my hub.js, but we are going to add a less file just to show that you can do that. So there's a little bit more configuration you have to do to add those plugins so Steel knows about them. And that is you add this Steel plugins and say, hey, we want to be able to load CSS and less. And most of Steel's configuration is really in here. We'll add to that. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do, I think we want to load that less file. So here I've just created a little less file, my hub less, and we're going to have my hub.js import that. And then when all is said and done, you'll notice it says goodbye script tags in the color for our H1s. Now you will notice there's this little flash font styled content. Remember that for later, how to deal with that. I'll show how Steel can handle flash font styled content in production. Okay. I also want to show just that you can use Bootstrap. Like, if you just want to load things from npm, it's just as easy as you would expect. Install Bootstrap, and then you can point it at like Bootstrap CSS file. That works fine. And then we'll change our HTML to use Bootstrap. Bootstrap will respond to this container CSS. Okay, So now let's actually do modlets. This is really the important thing. Whatever you're doing, whatever tools you use, I think this is really important. I'm going to make a weather folder, and then all of the code for that weather widget is going to, and the CSS is going to be in this weather folder. So I need a place where I can demo just that widget in isolation, so I can create that weather.html. And this is what it looks like. Basically, you load Steal like you normally would, but we're going to tell Steal, hey, don't load the main module that you would normally load. It's empty. Instead, you can have like little Steal inserted modules that can import whatever code they want. In this case, we're going to load the weather module. And once we have that function, we can tell it, hey, add the weather functionality to the, whatever element matches this CSS selector. In this case, weather. So this is what a setup. We can easily, and all of this stuff is mostly for Bootstrap, so Bootstrap knows how to like style itself correctly. But really, demo pages with Steal are just pretty simple. You load Steal, you import your stuff, and you set it up on the page. So now I need to create the weather JavaScript file, or the CSS, sorry. So I just pasted some CSS. Don't worry about this. This will just style the weather module. And I'm going to create a weather JavaScript file. And I'm just going to add the functionality, just cut and paste here. If you want, you can go through the guide and learn more about it. It's going to import jQuery, Bootstrap, and the specific weather CSS. And then it's going to export a function. So this is what it looks like in ES6 to export a function. There it's taking the CSS selector. And what this needs to do is go load the weather report and print it inside the element that matches this CSS selector. So for that, here I'm just an AJAX request to Yahoo. They have a weather open API. Making a request for that, and then I'm just kind of building with the result of it. I'm just going to build the HTML. Don't really worry too much about this. I'm just taking the response, reading the forecast, and just generating some a UL with some LIs inside of it for each day of the forecast. Really basic stuff. Okay, so with that, we can now open the weather demo page, right? I can develop on the weather demo page in isolation for the rest of the app. Oh, here it is. I can play with it, change its styles, do whatever without affecting everything else or having to click through a million buttons to get to this page. I think it creates really good like separation of concerns and things like that, developing with modlets. Okay, so there's the load. I'm just also going to show creating a test page that just tests this. Again, the full example will go through better tests that use dependency injection. We're going to create a really terrible test. But I'm going to create the weather test HTML page that will load just the weather modules tests. So that looks like this. Just real simple. You again load Steal, then point your main at the main module you want to load. Right? We saw empty previously, but in this case, we're just going to, you can also point main at a specific module. This is just for QUnit, the QUnit fixture, just as a placeholder to add elements to. So, and then I can create a weather test that HTML page will load. It's just going to load the weather module and run some basic tests on it. It's essentially going to just call the weather function on that fixture element and then make sure that eventually a UL, by polling, not a very good test, by polling, a UL is eventually added to the page. But the nice thing, again, because it's modlets, is I can now test this widget and work on it in total isolation application. JS, and I will import that module. We just created the weather module, and I'll create a little div for it. div. And I'll use the weather module on that div. So there, I just basically added an element and called our widget. So integrated into the fuller app, building these Lego pieces up. And the result of that is now if I refresh my hub, we get that goodbye script tags, but we also get the weather report underneath it. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing for the puppies photo album. We're going to use justified gallery, which is a jQuery widget. We're going to see a little bit how to configure things that aren't written with modules in mind. So I'm going to create a puppies modlet with a puppies HTML file. Again, same pattern as before. Exact same pattern, except this time I'm using CommonJS instead of ES6. You can mix those in a single app, no problem. Again, loading Steal, pointing, saying, hey, don't load the default module. Instead, I'm gonna like manually import what I want and set things up. This slide. And we'll create the puppies JavaScript. I would normally create a test as well, but I'm not going to do that here. We are going to see that justified gallery, you just can't load it. Right, we npm install it, but you can't just load it because they didn't write it with modules. It doesn't import jQuery, even though it depends on jQuery and depends on its style sheets. It just expects a window.jQuery. So when we try to reload our page, okay, it's breaking, it's giving us errors, it can't find justified gallery index. It's not even, its package.json isn't even configured correctly. It's a whole hot mess, that module. So what we need to do is configure it. Anybody ever configured a plain jQuery widget in like Webpack or something like that before? It can be a little annoying in all. I mean, it's annoying here too. Just want to show how to configure any kind of JavaScript code to work. So Steal has this meta and map configuration. Map says, hey, whenever anybody imports justified gallery, no, you really want to be importing justified gallery source JS, justified gallery JS. That's what this will say. And then we're going to say, hey, that module that's actually getting imported, it's global format. It's not written. It doesn't actually. It just expects window.jQuery to be there. So we're saying it's global, and then it depends on jQuery, and it depends on its own style sheet, its own less file. So that's what this configuration does. So yeah, we're basically mapping from one file to another file. Okay. So with that, we can implement justified gallery now. I'm going to require jQuery, and then again, the same pattern. I'm going to make an AJAX request to, in this case, I don't remember, it's like, oh, it's Flickr, okay. We're gonna make an AJAX request to Flickr, and again, the same kind of thing. We're gonna just update its inner HTML, the element that was passed, except we're gonna call justified gallery at the end, which will add the gallery behavior. And then, again, we can go to our Modlet demo page and see, I don't know what that is, but we can see a bunch of puppies. In some ways, some older dogs, I think. Okay, so cool. Now we can integrate puppies back into our main application. So I'm going to create those links so you can click on weather or you can click on puppies. And then what I need to do is make it so that you call the function on a main element. So I'll add that main element, whichever function we should, either weather or puppies. So then I'll also import I'm going to get rid of calling weather no matter what. Instead, I replace it with this mapping so that when the URL says weather, we want to run the weather function. And when it's puppies, we want to run the puppies function. And if there isn't anything in the URL, we want to say, this basically says welcome home. It'll insert a welcome home for the home page. Then we import puppies module. So we have all of our modules, and now we just need some code that when the hash jizz, it's going to call the right function on this main module. And that's what this update page does, gets the hash, and then uses that to look up the module that you need, and then it also listens on hash change, so when the hash ever changes, we're going to update the page. Could have done this with push state, but it's easier with hash change. Okay, any questions there? All right, I feel like I'm going really fast. All right, so now we can go back to our home page, and we click on puppies, it loads puppies, or it'll show puppies, and it'll call the weather function when we click on weather. This isn't progressive loading yet. We're going to make that work in a second, but first we're just going to build our whole application into a single JavaScript file. Later we'll set up progressive loading. So to make Steal's build work, you just call Steal tools, but I'm going to make that as part of my build script. So if I run npm run build, it calls Steal tools. Using npm scripts is great. Strongly encourage that for smaller based projects. So I'm npm run build, which just runs Steal tools. This is going to unified file with all of the application's code. And to load that, I'm going to create another HTML page that loads the production version of our built assets. And really the only difference is instead of loading StealJS, in the dist folder that got created, we're going to load the Steal production.js. And then this will load all of the other production JavaScript files for this application. Now if we look at it, we're going to see that Flash fun style content with the hello world. I did this in super slow motion, but still it's very hard to see. You can see that hello world flashing right here. See how it says hello world? That's because the styles weren't loaded at the top of the page. They were loaded at the bottom by Steal, right, along with the JavaScript files. You don't want that. That looks ugly. So to fix that, it's pretty straightforward. Steal, you just put, when Steal did its build, it built out the production CSS files in that dist folder. I just have to make a link tag that points to that. And then Steal will actually say, oh, you've already loaded this CSS asset. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to try to load it because I know you've already loaded it. So you just put in that, and then you won't see the Flash fun style content. Okay, but there's another problem, which is a performance problem. Because we're loading Steal, and then Steal has to load myhub.js, like the production JavaScript assets, there's this gross gap right here as the production CSS loads, and then the actual, so Steal loads, and then the production bundle loads. So we want to get rid of that. Steal really should just do this by default, but it doesn't yet because we want to be backwards compatible. So you add this bundle Steal configuration, and that will put Steal in with your JavaScript asset. So then we can rerun the build, which I'm doing. I'll skip over. And then once we've done that, instead of loading Steal production, you can just load your bundle that got built in that dist folder next to the CSS. So now with that, the performance will be much better. So if we refresh, you can see it's just loading the CSS and the JavaScript assets. Nice fast load times. Okay, so now let's do progressive loading. That means, again, when you click on one page, when I click on weather, it should dynamically load the content or the JavaScript and CSS files at that time. That way we can get, there'll be less JavaScript and CSS to load in the main home page, and then as people go to other pages. One sneaky technique we often do is we set up progressive loading, but in the background, right after the app loads, it starts dynamically loading all of other JavaScript assets so they're kind of ready. But at least we can get that first paint out right away. Okay, so I need to change this code so it doesn't statically import. See, I removed those static imports. Oh, hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to remove these. I need to remove these static imports because I want to progressively load them. So I'm going to remove them, and I need to change my update page function to dynamically import these things. So I'm going to get rid of that modules configuration. And instead, in an update page, what it's going to do is just check the hash and then use Steal import to load the right module. So here, if there isn't a hash, we're going to update the main like we were before to say welcome home. But if there is a hash, we want to use this Steal import to dynamically import. So if the hash is weather, then we'll dynamically import myhub weather, and then that will give us that module. And then because our modules are written in ES6 or CommonJS, we have to do some kind of detection. That's what all of this code is, to see what kind of module it is. And if it's an ES6 module, it'll be in this default. The function will be in this default property. Otherwise, if it's a CommonJS, it'll just be in the function. Or it will just export a function. The module will actually be a function. So we figure that out. We can figure out the actual function that we want to run that we just imported, and then we call it on main. Now we could handle, of course, which I'm not doing here, like what if you went to a page that doesn't have an import? These are promises, or doesn't have a module. These are promises so you could handle rejection, things like that. So setting this up, this is what allows us to progressively import, dynamically import the code. And there's one more thing we need to change, which is we need to tell Steal's build system that these are the modules that can be dynamically imported. There's a few different ways of doing it. For a simple app like this, you can just list them all. So I want to load puppies and weather. I want those as progressively loaded bundles. And then we rerun our build again, which I'll just show that you can tell it's separately, it's finding different mains to load. It sees these two things as needing to be progressively loaded. And then if we just check out the performance, you can see here, so pause it. So if you can see here, it loaded index.html, the main CSS, the main JavaScript. If you could see the sizes of these things, they would be much smaller now because we set up progressive loading. And then when I click on weather, you can see here it loaded the JavaScript and CSS files just for weather. And then it started making the AJAX requests and things like that. And then when I click on puppies, it'll do the same thing. So if you scroll to the top, you can see it dynamically imported puppies JavaScript and puppy CSS. And that's it. Any questions? Yeah.
Is there a way to specify the version of ECMAScript 6 that you are loading? For example, if you want to use a sync or a way.
Yeah, there's a Babel. It comes with the latest by default, but there's a way you can. There's a Babel config that you can use. But yeah, there's like a default version that's just built in.
And also that myhub.css, you have that already, or
The what?
The myhub CSS file?
No, myhub CSS. Yeah, or was it myhub.less? We created that in the very beginning. I know I was moving super fast.
But you created that, or it was created by StealJS?
No, we created that. So there's myhub.less that was created in the.
No. The CSS that is the first one that is loaded.
Oh, that's just you whatever you import the first one. That's whatever you need. There isn't like a first CSS. It's just whatever imported.
So there's a lower like for less that you have specified, right?
There's a plugin and a transpiler in Steal's terminology. It doesn't. There's only a except for a few scenarios.
But it works approximately the same.
Yeah.
Identifies less file and then.
That's exactly what happens here, because when you install these plugins, it will read through those plugins and they kind of have a configuration themselves that says, hey, CSS files.
But I'm just saying that in this case, it's comparable to the Webpack loader that handles less of the CSS.
Yeah. The big difference, I'm not sure if Webpack has been rewritten since the beginning, but Steal is based on SystemJS. Same with JSPM, which is like a polyfill for the ES6 ES module.
Where I'm going. I'm just trying to communicate that he was asking about CSS, how the CSS is being loaded. And
Yeah.
I'm just indicating that comparable, we have CSS in the Webpack, there's a CSS loader, let's say a class loader
Yeah.
that does the transpiles
Mhm.
less to CSS and so forth, and then generates the stuff for it.
Mhm.
In your case, you have a plugin that does it.
Yes.
That's it. Cool, sorry.
No, no problem. Yeah.
I saw in the presentation that you use QUnit as the main way to create and run tests. Is that the default, or is
No.
it forced to?
You have to install it. There's a few different, like, there's Jasmine, Mocha. People build plugins for all of those. It's mostly just the one I picked. The only difference, the reason why it's like StealQUnit, not actual QUnit, is because it just waits till all modules have loaded before calling like QUnit.start. So that's why there tends to be like a very like 5 lines of code for every one to just wait till the end of Steal's loading lifecycle. Question?
Yeah, we need to like take the other questions offline so that the audience can get
So the what key?
So the questions, like if anybody else other have questions, then we can just close the session and then ask in-person question.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So also, I did this like 2 months ago or something. I thought it went really well, and especially because seeing so many people here. We're gonna hold up prevent everybody from leaving until we hear 2 topics that people want to hear for next time, or
Next
maybe
meetup, yeah.
next meetup. What do people want to learn about? And then if someone wants to talk, that'd be great too. But let's first start with anything people want to learn. I know I heard regular expressions. I don't know if we got to that. The other things.
Have you covered Vue lately?
Vue.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Cool. Now we need one more.
How can we count that here?
Yes. No testing.
What?
Yes.
Yes.
Gist?
Actually,
Like
how
the-
does the Steel play around with the React?
It's fine. It's got React plugins and things like JSX works. Totally fine. Sorry, what was it again?
Yes.
Just the testing for React.
Just React.
Oh, not gist like GitHub's gist.
No,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Just is the unit test library for the React.
Cool. All right. We got it. Anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Because
Thank you.
anybody wants to like know about Vue.js and want to give a talk, just send us an email. Then we will send you a